I'm Andy Ball at AISB, and this is Helena from CEESA. It is our great pleasure to host Felina Hart and Joe George's session today on creating solution-focused schools. Go.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Felina Hart. I'm at the American International School of Budapest. Previously, before this, I was at Petrarch School in Kiev, Ukraine. And that's where I really start delving into solution focused and realize the applications that could be used throughout the school. I'm Joe.
I'm Joe George. Sorry, I was getting a phone call from the security desk. Just declined it. I'm Joe George. I'm at Walworth Barber American International School. I'm the middle school counselor here, and I was a middle school counselor at the Anglo-American School of Moscow for 12 years before I got here. This is my second year at WBAIS. About family and stuff, it might come up in this presentation. So, Felina, do you have anything you want to launch in about your background or anything?
No, not right now.
My wife is an elementary teacher. She teaches EAL, and I have two kids in elementary. My son's in grade 1 and my daughter's in grade 4. This presentation, we did a longer version of this for counselors at the ISCA presentation. This one is geared for all walks of life, all areas of education, and we hope you enjoy.
Oops, why won't it? Hold on, it won't forward. There we go.
And problem talk creates problems, solution talk creates solutions. And Steve DeShazer and Insoo Kimberg are two legendary creators of solution-focused practice. And Steve came up with this quote, and it's something that we hold to heart. And you'll notice as we go through this that it has that it doesn't deny problems. It just chooses to focus. We advocate, we acknowledge, but we focus on the solutions that we want to build together.
Okay, so our agenda for today, we're going to talk about why we chose solution focus, what's the rationale and benefits of it. We're also going to talk about what a solution focused conversation looks like, what are the building blocks and the application, and then the many different areas that it can be used within classrooms, offices, meetings, and more, and where you have lots of resources that are included. And so we'll actually upload this presentation to the Whova app, and you'll have access to all the links and resources.
And go to the next slide. What led us to this? Personally, for me, it was years of frustration and negativity. I was just kind of absorbing in my school, and I just got frustrated, and I kind of hit a rut, and I was just like, there has to be a better way. It was just weird having kids give you everything in the office and then like not even look at you because they were so embarrassed about what you knew, then have them come back and do the exact same thing the next week. And I just and personally and professionally, I just I felt there had to be a better way. And at the same time, I had been introduced to this in the early 2000s, and Felina brought it to CEESA counselor retreat, and it got me to explore it all over again in a new beginning.
And with me, it was a lot of the same thing. It was a lot of the, I worked in inner city schools before going international and other schools, and there was always that focus on the problems, and it was very draining to me. And so I needed something that I knew would not only make me feel better, but make the situation better, make everybody feel better, and not be so focused on the negative, but more focused on the positive.
And within this, there's a misnomer. There's some things that are misconceptions about solution-focused practice, and it's not naively optimistic. It's not Pollyanna. It doesn't deny the negative. It still gets people to think about the problems, and it acknowledges the problems. It just doesn't focus on the problems. We get people, and this is not just counselors. This is in every area of the school. People who are using it will get people to identify and envision and build what they want to happen after the challenge has been overcome. So it gets them to create the preferred future in their minds and then build it together.
Okay. And so really it focuses a lot on the future and not the past. You're not delving into the past. You're not delving into the why some things are happening, but instead it's what's going to happen in the future. What is it that we want the outcome to be? What is it that we want to look forward to, and how do we make that happen? And research has shown that this leads to a greater likelihood of achievement and change. It also helps for the student to avoid being defensive and reallocating the blame for what's happening to somebody else. It allows them to take responsibility for that. And then it opens a variety of different pathways and different options that can be explored. And when I've used it, I've noticed that students often will come up with different solutions than even what I had thought of. So before we go on, we want to quickly, this is just gives you a little bit of overview, but we want to quickly go to a Jamboard. And so Joe's going to put that up because we want to see what, we have a question for you.
Yep. So if you could go into the chat box, and I just threw it in there, click on the link. And if you've never used Jamboard, on the left-hand side, the fourth icon down, it looks like a little folded piece of paper with the corner turned up. Click on that, and then please just answer the question that's on that first slide. You're only looking at the first slide right now. What two things will show this presentation is useful for you?
The responses, did you want to share them, Joe, or does somebody want to?
And actually, everyone who has it open, other than the person who's sharing her screen, can see them. And some of them are, it'll benefit our students, practical tips to use in the classroom and with my own kids, takeaways that will be helpful across multiple divisions, learn something relevant and see if you can apply it, being able to, being able to take away tools, strategies for helping students and staff get unstuck. You guys are going to love this because we're going to cover all this stuff. And we have a bunch of resources linked in here that you can use around your school, even if we don't get to it. This is basically a 2-day seminar that we're going to be covering in about 40 minutes, and you'll have a lot of takeaways that you can use. If you do have any questions, this presentation will be linked to the Whova site, and as well as the actual video. But in the presentation itself, it'll have all the active links, and you can go back there at any time, save it for yourself, and you can access all the stuff. Okay. And if you have any questions, email us. After the ISCA presentation, I met with a couple different counselors that just wanted to kick ideas around about implementing solution-focused practice, so don't be shy.
Now we're going to get into how does it work, and we're going to start from the counseling perspective because this started as a therapeutic form of working with clients, but then from there it's developed into how it can be used in different areas. So the basic format goes as so. You always start with the best hope. So you want to get from the client, what is it that they want? What is their desired outcome, or from the student? With this, it's kind of like the contract for the conversation. So once you know what that hope is, then you can move forward with helping them define how they're going to go about doing that. After that, you go into what we call resource talks. So you look for instances or exceptions or times when the student was successful, when they were able to accomplish that hope, when they were able to do those things. You look at what's working and then try to help them come up with how they can do more of that. So if it was working at this point and you were able to do it at this point, what allowed you to do that? And then how can we do more of that? Then you also help them to visualize what that preferred future is. So when they've accomplished that hope, what are they going to notice? What are others going to notice? What are the signs that are going to be visible that shows that they're moving forward, that they're actually accomplishing that hope and getting that preferred future? And then at the end, you always talk about summary and your feedback and suggestions. So you're always asking them to watch out for progress, even if it's just a tiny little sign, one little nugget of progress. That's something to be celebrated, because every little step then leads into this bigger outcome. Within there, there's other strategies that you use, such as scaling. And I love scales. Scales is what I love scales. So from 0 to 10, where would they rank themselves now? Why are they there? What are they doing that allows them to be at that number? If they moved up one number on the scale, what would that look like? So it's always helping them find the ways to identify where they're at and how are they going to move forward. And it's all coming from them. It's all solutions. And especially like if you work with middle school or even high school, a lot of times when you start offering solutions to kids, they're like, yeah, and they zone you out and they're going blah, blah, blah. When you actually get them to come up with the solutions themselves and you get them to come up with the ideas, there's more of a buy-in from them. So it seems very structured, but within here, there's a lot of room to play around. There's a lot of different ways to ask questions to get to this point. There's a lot of different ways to go about doing this. And Joe and I each approach this in different ways. And so you'll find out about that.
And there are three main principles that we're going to ask everyone here to consider. And one, educators generally are gluttons for punishment, and you have to accept first and foremost that you are wonderful doing whatever it is you are doing. People talk to you because you're wonderful. You have your job because you're wonderful. Okay, and I have little kids, so I watch a lot of cartoons. But just smile and wave, smile and wave, boys, smile and wave. If you know Madagascar, but then remember to breathe. And whatever your style is, keep doing it. Okay. If you want to try a new style, it's the next two things. Okay. And principally, the starting point, the difference between solution focus and a lot of other pathways in education is this is about building hope. You have to look at your job first and foremost is not counselor, teacher, administrator. You're a hope builder. Okay. And how you do that is you have to evoke their inner superhero. Okay. And you do that by two main ways. You assume good intent, knowledge, and ability. With that, it doesn't matter how many times the kid has screwed up. You don't focus on it. Okay. It doesn't matter how many, think about it. If a kid has screwed up 10 times and they still walk in through that door, can you imagine how tough that would be? Okay. And with all of this, if you look at hope as being the goal, it's about building positive energy, collaboration, and relationships. Can you think of a school on the planet that doesn't need those three things? Okay. Now, with that, if you're assuming good intent, and with this, you also have to think of yourself as a facilitator, not the expert. You are not the solution finder. And this is what Felina was just getting to on the last slide, that through the questions you ask, you help them create the picture. They are the experts in their lives right now. And that's not just students, that's with staff too. This can be done in meetings. This can be done with parents. And we'll go over how.
So really with solution focus, you really want to focus on that desired outcome. What is the preferred future? Always starting with that best hope, getting them to buy in with some sort of contract. And if it's coming from the individual, then there's more of that buy-in. You also want to help them envision that an outcome that is achievable. You don't want to make it so big that they never achieve it. So that's why we always talk about starting small and looking for small little changes and helping them find small little resources where they can take these little baby steps, but eventually all those little baby steps lead into a greater outcome. And every question you ask is about that desired outcome. It's always about what is it going to look like? You're helping them to envision this, because that's helping their brain to then process what it's going to look like, where then they're more likely subconsciously to then start engaging in behavior to make those things happen. A lot of schools have staffs with tons of experience and often tons of opinions. So providing that positive outcome-based focus establishes a really good goal that everyone can work towards, as well as an invitation for people to contribute, because you're not delving into the negative, you're not delving into the problems. Instead, you're building that hope, and you're making that focus all about how are we going to move forward and how are we going to make things better. So with that, focusing.
With that, there are, sorry. I had a student who's come to see me. Sorry, I should have come back. As you're getting used to doing this, when you start implementing, we're going to go over really now quickly. There are three main components, and the questioning dives into these three things. And the starting point, the one that everyone needs to start with is be pragmatic. Okay, and if you, by focusing on actions, what they are doing, help them think about, okay, what am I doing when I wake up on this better day? Okay, how do I know? What are the first signs? Okay, what will I be doing? And then ask different versions of that to help them build the vision. Then, after you get better with that, you can look at interactions. What will the teacher notice when I am when I'm getting my work in and succeeding? Okay, what will my mom notice when I'm happier? Okay, what will I notice when whatever that best hope is, and what effect will that have? And then descriptions. After you really, this right here is the one that as you start getting them talking, you'll get better at recognizing when something is broader than it appears. Okay, because a lot of answers are easily accepted as they are, but then you have to say, wait, what does that look like? What, like, say, for example, I'll be successful, or life will be better. Okay, it's easy to go on to another question rather than explore that descriptor. When you get into it and get more comfortable with it, you'll recognize, what does need to be broken down more, and what will that look like?
And so with that, you always want to use their words. So as they're speaking to you and they're giving you information, you want to use those words in anything that you're asking as well. Common things that you can hear within a solution-focused meeting, especially if a student is, when, for instance, like in meetings when I've had about students at previous schools, where there was always, well, they're doing this wrong and doing this wrong and this wrong. So instead of focus on the negative, you can change it to what would be happening instead. What would you like to see them doing? And so you're changing it more into what it is that you want to see, and then we can move forward. And you can do that with the students as well. Asking them what will be different when this happens. So what difference is that going to make for you? What will my teacher notice when this is occurring? Keep it small. So what's happening look like? You want to always keep the signs very small. So, little indications of something that shows that it is improving. You don't want it to be these big grand gestures. And what would you rather see? Instead of the negative, what would you rather see? And then always building in as much detail as you possibly can by adding what else. So a lot of times when I'm meeting with the student, they'll give me one answer and I'll go, well, what else? And then they'll give me another answer and I'll go, well, what else? And eventually then we have a list of things to work from, and we start to develop some depth within there, which then helps us to further advance the conversation and advance what they want to do. A big issue all the time is problem talk, and how do you redirect it? Because that's the go-to in human nature. We're geared to often just talk about the problems and not the solutions. And so how do we redirect that? This was a diagram that I had found, and I think it just gives a good brief overview of the difference between that problem talk and solution talk. So with problems, you're looking at the problem and what's not working and what's wrong. And with solutions, you're looking at what is working, what's going well, how can we have more of that? With problem talk, it's yes, but. With solution talk, it's yes, and. And you can see how this fits a lot within that growth mindset that we teach as well, because it's all about, okay, this is where we're at now, but where can we be? What can we do differently? How can we get there?
And again, one thing, just like any other approach, it all starts with listening, acknowledging, and validating. Okay. If something is hard, say, wow, that's hard. I mean, tell them that's amazing that you got, how'd you get through it? And then looking at what would be different, and a lot of the things that Felina was just covering.
And so you also want to look at, how did they get through it? How do they keep themselves going? Stop things from getting worse. A lot of times when I meet with students, they'll rate themselves very low and they're like, things are just horrible. I'm like, yeah, but yet you're still here and you're still showing up to your classes and you're still doing these things. So how are you doing that? What are you doing to keep yourself going? And you're trying to help them find the strengths that they already naturally have. And then how can they use those even further? And then also looking at having them think about who would be pleased to notice that even though things are tough, they're doing so well, they're doing these things. So solution focused skills can be used anywhere. This is a great book, Solution Focused Practice in Schools. It gives a lot of very clear strategies and ideas that can be used in different areas of the school and especially within the classroom. So if you're looking at doing more solution focused stuff within the classroom, this is a great book and a great tool to have there.
Yeah, it also gets into very concrete, specific examples. Everything from a different way to norm the class to, it's literally helping the class create the vision. You can do the same thing in staff meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And within that, if we're going to go back to the Jamboard right now, if you could open up, if you're new to the group, please, I just put a Jamboard in the chat box. If you could open that up and then go to slide 2. And thinking about, this is just an example of scaling that some of you have seen and some haven't, but it's a pretty easy concept that you look at helping them build the 10. So for you today, okay, where are you? And then Monday, you'll be one step higher. What will be the first things you'll notice? So just humorous. Let's toss in on the right-hand side, put in what your 10, 1 or 2 things in your 10, and then somewhere else, put the number where you are and the first sign, the first thing that you'll notice when you're one step higher. So for whoever just tossed in the 6, can you tell us what it will look like when you're one step higher? What will be the first sign that that you're at your 7 on Monday? And if you put it in the Jamboard itself, that would be even better. And you're all going to have access to keeping this Jamboard at the end because the third slide that we'll get to later will have some more tangible things that you might want to remember for later. And see a couple people mentioned more energy. Feel more confident about using this. Mm-hmm. Excellent. And we spent the first half of the presentation, we tried to go over a little bit more slowly because it has all the major principles. And the next half, we're going to have to pick up the pace a little bit. But we just want you to know that everyone will have access. We have a lot of resources in the second half that will have that you can use for takeaways. And you can see on the next slide.
Okay.
These are just areas that Felina and I regularly utilize solution-focused strategies around school. And we're also getting our administrators to start doing the same.
A lot of things that I focus on is scales. I'm a huge fan of scales, and so I use them in a multitude of conversations. I've also done a lot of work with young kids doing mini conversations and making them more interactive. Parental meetings, especially with behavior mediation. I do what we call a 360 evaluation, where I have an individual look at, instead of talking about from themselves what their strengths are, but I have them pick a friend, a colleague, and somebody else in their life, and have them start making lists as far as what those people would say about them, because it's easier for you to talk about from somebody else's perspective than your own. And then lists are huge as well. I try to get kids to build as long a list as possible on different topics, because that helps them then to have something to go off of. And it gives them a lot of different options within there. And so this is some of the stuff, especially when I worked in elementary, I had interactive scales. So I had scales actually like on my door and the floor that kids could, with little Velcro tape, and they could move the people around. So where would you put yourself at this point? Where do you think your teacher would put yourself, your parents? And then also from my work with Denise Youssef, I adapted some scales where if kids didn't understand the numbers, then we would talk about their favorite foods. So 10 is their ultimate favorite food, and 1 is the food that they like the least. And so we'd actually build a scale based off of foods, or we would build a scale based off of games that they enjoy and different activities. So we make it fit within their language and within their development. Also within elementary, I would do a lot of art drawing, where we're doing the solution focused talk with the art drawing. And the National Society for the Protection of Cruelty to Children has a great toolkit that's free offline that has a lot of different templates and things that you can use within that. I've also, with sensory paths, have done a solution focused conversation with students where we're working through the sensory path and they're jumping along and we're doing those things. And so it's very interactive. And then also role play. So when we talk about their preferred future, having them actually role play what that would look like. And it just makes it more interactive, especially for the younger kids, and less talk based. And so that actually helps them as well.
And with this, I'm a really visual guy, and a lot of middle schoolers tend to be as well. And I've also found that the older I get, it's really not that different for adults. And because of that, I really like taking notes during the session in a way that they can see what's going on. So I have like a little whiteboard, and we'll be talking, and I'll jot down some stuff. I also work on my iPad regularly, and then on the Zoom screens, like when we're in meetings, when we've been virtual, I'll share my iPad so they can see it. And the good thing about it is it's actually it helps everybody kind of relax, because they can follow along with what's going on. And it takes the pressure out of staring at the person and they're looking at their eyes, so they can kind of go back and forth. And in my experience, taking notes during the meeting is actually it actually complements what's going on. The next part really only matters. Oh, go back.
Oops. Well,
and there are a couple other things. Well, the next three things are really built more for counselors. And if you do have any questions, I'd be happy to talk about them later. Felina did mention something really important also earlier, and we have it in our later slides and earlier slides, but we, just in case it's missed, using their words is really important. And don't paraphrase, don't interpret. The reason why it matters is because when you're building their vision, if you use their words, it gives you a stronger springboard. When I started to get trained, you can see in front of you, the traditional model is what Felina just went over. And as you get better and better with it, you'll be able to probably come close to following it. And more specifically, after you get better and better with it, you're probably going to be doing something more like on the far right, that you're going to be able to, like, if you ever hear of a guy named Chris Iveson, Felina likes to talk about the museum approach, that basically you walk in the front and you exit the exit, but in the middle you kind of follow the groove and go to what you want to see. But and after you're comfortable with the questioning approach, you can do that. The problem when I was getting trained is I had a hard time actually getting it done in a timely fashion if I sticking to the 4 segments. And my first career, I was a high school social studies teacher, and I had a master's in curriculum. So I worked with Evan George, who was my mentor at Brief, the organization we have linked in here later. And we came up with a UBD kind of backwards design approach with solution focus. And if you advance. So what we're going to talk about right now is getting into how you can use either one of these based upon your comfort zone and your timeliness. And you have a template in the examples that you can take away and do this.
So this is a great template that Joe created. And so with it up here, this is your best hope. So what are you hoping to take from today from talking? That's when you're talking with the student. What do you want to be better? A lot of times if I'm dealing with like a discipline issue and things, I'll say, what do you want to be better? And then what difference is that going to make for you? Like, are they going to feel better when that's happening? You know, what difference is it going to make for them? What difference is it going to make for others? And then also the scales, which I love. You add the scales in, you do those. And with that, you're looking also at what's working for them. So what works, what's tomorrow going to look like? That's the preferred future. What will be noticed when this is happening? And then you always want to end with having them confirm what their strengths are, reflecting back on what it is that you talked about, and then what will be the next steps and the likelihood for that success.
And before, can you go back one? Just thanks. So so we're all on the same page, I'm going to go over what each of these three parts are. Then you can see how they would be used in the different styles differently. Okay, so just to the far left of the screen, the instances exceptions. Something is always working, and the challenge in front of the person isn't always there. So it's looking at when have they been successful, finding that instance, finding out what kind of things they're doing, and make it portable. Make it so you can follow up and talk about it in the later parts. The envisioning the next steps, it's the tomorrow question. It's like tomorrow when you wake up and everything's one step better, how are you going to know? What are you going to see? And helping them envision it and build it. And then the green one, the circle, is envisioning the preferred future and helping them literally do all the stuff we mentioned on the three components before. And then within that, if you're doing the traditional model, you after you do the thing that's labeled step 1 at the top, you go over and you find the instances, okay, and then you kind of leapfrog back and forth, going back and forth between the orange and the green. They're kind of intermixed, okay, and it's kind of like doing the tango. You just kind of tango on, okay, and but if you're doing the UBD model, you do the green first. You help them see what this is where why I call it a backwards design model, because you say like, what is the endpoint, okay, and then you look at where are you now, and then you look at what's going to be happening when you're one step better, when you're one step closer to that endpoint. And for educators, a lot of them do find the backwards design model a little bit more comfortable until they get used to it.
So other areas you can use this, especially you can use it within rules discussions. So at the beginning of the year or any time when you're dealing with, classroom management. So looking at the established rules that you have, what exactly does it mean to be respectful? What does that look like? And what else, and having them build the descriptor of what that rule means within the classroom. What will I, as a teacher, be noticing when this is happening within the class? What am I going to notice from you? What are you going to notice from me when we know that, respect is happening within the class? And there's no limit to the use of scales, making things as interactive as possible. I've used the SolutionFocused Talk with the wellness wheel as well within there. You can also use it for school planning.
And within this, you can do it for, if you could click on the blue links, Felina. This can be done in two different ways with that same form that we referred to a minute ago. You can do it for individual planning, where you break down your individual goal setting and you break it into segments. Okay, how will I know when? And this is just something I did for any school on the planet. But then if you scroll down to the next page, you can see how the same information could be done in a staff meeting, where you literally, you make sure everyone's on the same page for the best hope and what difference would it make. And then you identify what would the different groups be doing, and you have them build it together. Okay. And with that, each of the areas, you could do this in small groups. You could do it think, pair, share. You could do it a bunch of different ways, but it's the same. It's just how you can take the same template and use it for either individual or group meetings.
You can also use it when you're doing reflections. I know a lot of times students have to do reflections within the classroom or within advisory programs. And so with that, what's something in my learning this week that surprised me in a good way? What's one thing that I've been doing differently in my learning this week? So it's just a different way of asking those reflection questions to get them to dig deeper, but to also make them more positive, to make them more solution focused.
And the same, this is just totally piggybacking off of what Felina was just saying. You can do it for strategies, for looking at processes. You could look at for benefits, resilience. You can tie it in the classroom, even when things aren't going well. And you can say, okay, what's gone well so far this class? And what will be 2 signs that it's even better the second half? And you can kind of do it in a bunch of different ways. The same questioning. The whole point is to get them to think about what the success will look like and build it together.
Parent and staff meetings. I've used this a lot, especially with difficult parents. And there's a share from Focused Conversations. She actually has a whole thing, PowerPoint presentation and a whole thing that she does just on using this with parents and how, and it really helps to get buy-in with parents. With parents that I had that were especially difficult and maybe weren't buying into the whole process of what we were trying to do for students. When I've used the solution focused conversation with them, I've had a complete mind shift. And especially at my old school, I had one parent that was very standoffish about what we were trying to do for their student. And once I did this solution focused conversation with the parents and the teachers all at the same time together, within the next day, that parent reached out to me and said, you tell me what we need to do, whatever we need to do, I'm on board, because this was the first time I actually heard positive things about my child. This was the first time I've actually heard the good things that my child's doing. And so we trust you now. And so whatever it is you need, we're there to, we're on board and we'll move forward with that.
Now, we're in the process of shifting from student concerns meetings to student success meetings. But to do that, initially we had to do a walkthrough with the staff where I had them do a survey in advance of the different things that they liked and didn't like and how they wanted it to look. And then we started to build stage 1 of the revision together. And then stage 2, we're going to actually be having in about the next month, where we're going to then look at how we could make it even more solution focused. So it was kind of like a multi-stage approach, but this is an example how the same thing can be done with staff in multiple ways.
Mm-hmm. You can also, you want to make sure when you're doing working within the classroom, you're not just saying, oh, well done. Instead, you're building on that and you're using the solution focused type questioning and formats in order to go beyond just that well done. So were you pleased with that? Or how difficult was that for you? How much of a challenge? So based on, the outcome, is the student feeling successful? You probably would go more with alternative 1. If you see that they're struggling and they're having a difficult time, then you would go with alternative 2 to start that conversation. And then you go into, okay, so how did you manage to do it? How were you able to work through that? And then what did it take for you to do that? What did you learn about yourself in doing this process? What did you draw on, the strengths, the resources, and what else? And so again, it fits very clearly with the growth mindset. It's just allowing you to use questions to kind of pull that information out of the student.
This is just an example of a 5-minute conversation framework that is from the book that we previously addressed. And as you can see, it's all the same questions that we've been talking about and with the same types of key areas. And they also have 3-minute templates and it's laid out in different things, but the whole thing is getting them to think about building what they want to build. And it doesn't have to be a half-hour sit-down meeting. It could literally be 5 minutes. And if someone's telling you about how difficult something was, and say, I mean, wow, what did you do to get through it? That sounds so tough. And how'd you keep going? And then you get them to say, and identify the key strengths. And this is just another example. The book has a bunch of these.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and by the way, Elfie Cohn, the guy I have linked down there, it's an article I really like that before I really started diving into solution focus, it's this article's 5 reasons to stop saying good job. And I really like his key takeaways at the end of the article because they really tie to solution focus. It's say nothing, say what you saw, or just simply talk less and ask more questions. And that's really what this is about.
So how do you get started? That's always the question. And it's one of those things, is even with all the work that I've done with it and all the training I've done with it, it's one of those things that I'm still having to push myself to practice, and I'm still finding new ways to approach it. And there's a lot of resources out there, which we have linked on here to share with that. But before we do that, we want to go quickly back to the Jamboard.
And Heather, I just put the Jamboard back in for those of you who hadn't seen it. And for Heather, yes, you're going to have the templates, and you'll have this whole presentation, and the templates are a link to it, especially on slide, I believe it was 18, that had the chart with the 1, the 2, and the 3. The examples up in the upper corner in the right. It's linked to different things, everything from sample sessions to staff meetings to templates to be used around school. So if you could go to the Jamboard again and go to the 3rd slide. And what we really want to know is for you, if you could stop for a minute, we've thrown a whole lot at you. And it's basically a college course in 40 minutes. And we'd like to know, what are the 2 biggest things you want to remember from this presentation? So some of the things, using the scales to visualize the process. I like the templates, taking negatives to positives, and always seeking the descriptions. Listen and ask more. Stop saying good job. Use it more with students. Turn it to student success meetings. Ask what else, what else, what else. What else is the magic question that everyone who's beginning this will fall back to? Because generally people will start ad-libbing when there's dead time. Ask what else.
So now we're going to go quickly so we have some time for questions. So how did you get started? Basically, you want to start small. So pick 1 or 2 things that you really want to focus on. One thing that you want to start, slowly implementing into your practice. When I did this training at my old school, I slowly started throwing these questions out in faculty meetings, or throwing them out during student at-risk meetings. And eventually my principal called on and was like, what is this you're doing? And so then I started explaining that it was solution focused, but it changed the whole format of the conversations. So you want to start small, just start looking at 1 or 2 things that you can try. And then as you start doing that and you start building it, you're going to gain more knowledge. You're going to start to feel more comfortable, and you're going to start being able to add more into your practice and add more ideas within there. Get involved as much as you can with it. Look into different resources, different things that are out there, and then just be dedicated. It's a mind shift. And so you have to be dedicated to that mind shift, and know that it's not going to be seamless. There's going to be times that you start falling back on that problem conversation, but it's the idea of catching yourself and then re-engaging back within the solution conversation. So we listed out different types of trainings that are out there. Brief, which is what George and I went through and got our certificate in. There's also the Solution Focused University. Solution Focused Schools is a great new resource that I found, and they do a conference every year where it's just strictly about how schools are using this and different ways to use it within schools. In Texas, there were schools that were set up that were strictly solution focused schools, and they took all these students that were at risk of not graduating, and actually the students came to these schools and they start using just strictly solution focus with them with all their work. And they have, I think, something like a 95% success rate with those kids actually graduating, where before they would have been dropouts. The focused mindset's another great resource, especially dealing with parent conversations. Linda Metcalf has tons of books about teaching towards solutions, parenting towards solutions, all those sorts of things. And Routledge has a lot of books, and a lot of books that were published by the people from Brief are within there as well. Organizations that you can look at and get involved in. Ben Furman's Kids Skills. He's actually out of Finland, and he has apps and stuff that are available that allows you to use this with kids also. I have a little teacher check-in cheat sheet worksheet that I created based off of Joe's template that we've put in here as well. So there's a lot of different things within there. So that's the student check-in sheet. And so it gives you a lot of different ideas of different questions that can be asked in different areas and allows you to walk through. These are some great books, especially for using it within schools. So these are great books to resource. And then this is another book, which Joe will talk about.
Okay. I just as a reminder before I get to this fantastic book, I put our websites in here, and this fantastic book is because Felina is one of the co-authors. She has a chapter in it, and we highly recommend people consider anything they can find. With the couple slides back with the resources for Brief, if you're a non-counselor, Evan, George, and the three guys at Brief used to say, actually, sometimes it's actually easier to train non-mental health professionals in solution focus because they have less to unlearn. And the two trainings for the two top linked ones with Brief and Elliott Connie's Solution Focused University, Elliott Connie and Adam Froer, they are great at training, and like for Linda Metcalf, Felina and I are even doing a 3-day thing that starts tonight with her, and Felina and I we're doing some trainings if people would like to apply it to international settings. We have many different options. The only thing, if you're interested, there's no wrong starting point. The only way you're going to get good at it is starting to do it. And I started with my for controlling the controllables. What's controllables? What you do and what you think. So I started only in my counseling office, my counseling practice, and then after I was really comfortable with it, I broadened out, and now I have no problem doing it with anywhere at any time. And you'll get the same way. If you think this sounds exciting, get trained, talk to us, ask questions, and we'll help you get started.
Yeah, and you can reach out to either of us anytime. I'm happy to sit down with anybody and look at what is your particular situation, and then help you devise a way to use it within your setting and how to help you get started. So I think we have like 5 or 6 minutes left for questions. I do see one in the chat about the different situations, scenarios that classroom teachers can use it. You can use it in a variety, especially if you have a student that's having difficulty. I use it with those students all the time. If I go and have to pull a student out, I will start with, okay, so what is it? This is what happened. Okay, fine. This is what happened, but what do we want to be better? Okay. And what is it going to look like when you go back into the classroom? what is that going to look like to your fellow students? What is it going to look like to your teachers? So, and you can do these conversations very quickly within the moment, especially with discipline issues, to help with that the management of the classroom as well. But you can use it within the whole classroom setting. So if you have that day where the class is all kind of wired up, say, okay, whoa, let's take a step back. Okay, what are some of our agreements for this class? Okay, so how will I know that we're being respectful, that we're having a good learning environment? What would be my hope for our class today as far as behavior and those sorts of things? And then from there, the conversation goes into, okay, so what am I going to notice as a teacher about you if that's successful? What are you going to notice about me as a teacher if that's successful, if we're having a successful class, if we're being respectful within the class? And so you can just pepper the conversation, the questions in basically in any scenario.
And with that, when you ask them, like, remember, stay small. Ask them, what are the first signs that things are going to be a little bit better? And then when they tell you, they'll come up with some kind of answer and then say, well, and then you could either ask another question about that, or you could stop and say, well, okay, that sounds excellent. So what are you going to do tonight to help put that into play? Like if a kid says, I'm going to be well rested, say, okay, well, what has to happen tonight to make that happen? Well, I have to go to bed earlier. Okay. And then say, okay, well, what has to happen for that to happen? So it can be, it's helping them create the picture through questions. And that's really what it comes down to. Start small, help them create the vision.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments, anything? You can just unmute yourself.
I was just wondering, from a student perspective, is there value in talking to kids about this approach prior to using some of the strategies?
I don't know that you necessarily have to talk with them about the approach, because when you just start using that conversation, you can kind of see a shift. For instance, like when I had that parent meeting back at my old school with all the teachers and the student was involved as well, the first thing that the student said was, I'm worried about this meeting because teachers always say bad things about me. They always talk about the things I'm doing wrong. And I said, you know what? Don't worry about it. Just trust me. And when we start asking the conversation, I started off with, okay, I want to know 2 things that this child's doing really well. And what's your one, if you had to pick one concern, what would it be? And that's how we start the conversation. And you saw the parents and the students at the beginning of the meeting very tense. And then as soon as the teachers start talking about, well, actually they're doing this really good, or they're doing this really, and those positives start coming out, you saw a complete shift in the body language of the parents, a complete shift in the body language of the students. And afterwards, that's what I said, the mom came to me and said, whatever you want us to do, Miss Felina, we're on board. And then the student came to me, he's like, that's the first time I've heard teachers actually say that I'm doing these things good, and he was able to take it in, and he had a clear understanding. So I don't know that you necessarily have to talk with them about it. I think just by asking them the questions and just going through the process, they are pretty flexible and they get into it pretty easily, but it also helps them kind of just shift their mind as soon as you start asking those questions, because they're like, oh, you're not going to be talking about everything I'm doing wrong, right? You're going to actually talk about some things that I'm doing good. You're actually going to focus on the positives. Wait, what is this? And it does change. It does change that relationship.
And I live in a culture that a lot of people like to explore the depths of their challenge, and with, I think a lot of us do, and I think there are subcultures that do that all over the planet anyway. But my principal, she and I were talking about this the other day, and she loves seeing this in practice because she's noticed a whole tone shift this year, and she loves it with parents. She loves it with kids. She wants to get trained in it just because she's been in a lot of meetings that we've been together, and there's a method to the madness, but after you get good at it, the method's kind of more fluid.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Everybody.
Bye.